Mr. DJ.
Well, check this out. We got a great show coming your way.
From the ECSI Sports Studios, the #1 sports information program in America, the Breakfast Bankroll, with your host, the sports broker, Jeff Dawson.
Good morning, sports fans from all around the globe. I am your host, Jeff Dawson, East Coast Sports Investors. This is your Breakfast Bankroll for Monday, December 5th, 2022. Yes, you survived the weekend. It's a new day, new week, new start, fresh beginning. And what better way to start the week when you reach out to a good friend and colleague, and he reaches back and says, hell yeah, the one and only B2B, Rob, from Beating the Bookie, is blessing the ECSI studios to start the week. A little weekend recap, little college sports recap, NHL, whatever we decide to talk about is here. So without further ado, let's bring him in from the Palm Tree State himself, the one and only B2B.
What's going on, Jeff? Happy Monday morning.
Happy Monday morning. We survived. We're here. Alabama is not here. The college Final Four in football was released yesterday before the kickoff of the NFL games. Unfortunately, I don't want to say they got it right. I had that feeling there was no way TCU was going to get knocked off the slate. I was looking a couple weeks prior. They were 7-point dogs to Texas or the Baylor game after. They won both of those. So they came into, I thought, when you have three undefeated teams, Georgia, Michigan, and TCU, then you had the one loss, and then Bama outside looking in with the two losses. Are they the better team? Should they be in there? I think they are. Unfortunately, there's never been a two-loss team in. Thoughts on the Final Four?
You know, it's whatever. I mean, it is what it is. You got two teams going into the Final Four that have lost their last game, so it's a little odd, you know. But you know, I think Alabama. I think Alabama is a top 4 team in the country, especially when you factor in that, you know, Bryce Young was injured both games that they lost. You know, they played the backup a few games this year when Bryce Young sat out. They lost both games on the last play of the game. And, you know, one was because their kicker missed the field goal, gave Tennessee the ball with good field position. And the other was just on a 2-point conversion, you know, by a good coach. So at the end of the day, they did lose 2 games. So I don't really have a problem with it. It's not like we've seen a 2-loss team win a national championship before, though, in LSU. So I people get too caught up in this like 2-loss thing. You know, when you're playing the Big Ten schedule, I hate to say it, but it's tough to get 2 losses because outside of Michigan and Ohio State, I mean, the conference is complete garbage. I mean, Penn State's all right, but besides that, the conference is like hot garbage. You know, Wisconsin sucked this year. Iowa couldn't score a point. So it really just wasn't impressive this year. I think it's just, I don't have a problem with the 4 teams. I just think it's not good if like 2 teams from the Big Ten get in over like the SEC, for example. And I'm not a SEC fan, you know, so I just think it sends like a wrong message. But it is what it is. I think it doesn't matter in the long run. I think Georgia's just such a much better team than everybody else, where I don't think it necessarily matters. I do think the semifinal, I have a problem with the semifinal matchup. I think they give Michigan the easier matchup with TCU than making them rematch Ohio State. You know, how do you give the second seed a favorable, scheduling over the first seed? I thought that was a little ridiculous, but you know, the way Michigan ran, straight through Ohio State, I don't think Georgia, will have much problem, especially with the experience they have. And, Kirby Smart is just such a better coach than Ryan Day. So I have no problem with it. I'm just tired of Ohio State getting this treatment. Like, their fans complain about Alabama getting the treatment and stuff like that. Well, The SEC has won 13 out of the last 19 championships. Ohio State hasn't won a championship since 2014. So, I just think, everybody complains and moans and stuff about they should get in and stuff until they hear another team complaining and moaning about it. Then they have a problem. So, I think the solution is just go to 8 teams, right? Like do 8 teams. I think 12 is too much. 12 is way too much. So, I mean, you're looking in the future. Michigan and Ohio State will be playing in the playoff every year. Like what's the incentive to do well that last game of the season where they go against each other, right? I just think 12 is way too much. I wish we had an 8-team playoff, but a 12-team, they're going for the money and stuff. So that's just a little ridiculous, I think. But, it is what it is. I'll never complain about getting more college football games. I just think it, just makes it harder for, people at the top who go undefeated and stuff like that. And people will never stop complaining, even when they go to 12 teams, right? Say the first round, right? Say the 5th seed's 12-1 conference champion, right? And they lose to the 12th seed, right? It could be a 3-loss team. You never know. And they want like they had 3 losses. They should have never made it in the first place. And it's like they want we should play best of 3. It's like a slippery slope that will like never end. This year would have been a perfect year for the BCS. I think it should just be like a sliding scale, right? Like if you don't go undefeated, like you should be just disqualified. Maybe I don't know what they're gonna do, but, going forward, but they should just the BCS would have worked this year, right? So you really never know. Every season is different. I guess that's what makes college football, one of the greatest sports for me. But there's just really no solution in sight, unless you go to that big playoff like we see from the FCS, But I think 12 teams, you're still going to have the 13th and 14th team complaining, So it's just never going to end. But I have no problem with the 4 teams. I think it's TCU, like one of the top 4 teams in the country. I don't think so. They won a few games by like 3 points, 7 points this year in last possessions and stuff. So do they deserve it though? Yeah. I mean, I think they deserve it. Does Ohio State deserve it after getting blown out at home by 23 points to their arch rival? I don't think so, but I mean, I don't have a problem with them making it, but I mean, the system is just flawed, so you just have to make do, with what you're going with right now.
As you said, there's always going to be complainers in college basketball. They go, 16, 32, 64. There's always Dickie V screaming and hollering, this team got left out, this team out. And basketball and football is apples to oranges. Yeah. A 16 can be the one. We saw that with Virginia that one year. 2s losing the 15s, 3s losing the 14, yada, yada, yada. And you get a football where you just talked about, if they went to 12, it would have been like a Tulane. Listen, Tulane's a great story. They've had a great year. They'd have been like 26-point underdogs to a Georgia team or something like that. And then what's going to happen, Rob, is when they finally do put this in play, one of the top teams is going to lose a quarterback or a big-time player in that game, and then they're going to win, but they're not going to be ready the following week. So it's just more wear and tear on these kids and a longer season.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind the extended playoff. I just think 12 teams is just too much. It should be 8. 12 teams, it's like basically everybody's getting in at that point. You would have – just look at the top 12 this year. I mean, let's just take a look right now, just for example, right? Like – Washington would be in, against Ohio State, right? Washington has no shot to win a national championship, right? Like they shouldn't be, right? Utah, another team, right? No shot. Kansas State, they're not going to beat, a team like Georgia. Clemson, we've seen what Clemson does, right? In big games. No quarterback this year. Penn State, 8th. I mean, we saw Penn State play big games against Ohio State, Michigan stuff get throttled. So I don't need to see that again, right? Tennessee, if Hendon Hooker was the quarterback right now, sure, right? And then, so you basically have 7 teams, right, with Tennessee. If Hendon Hooker was healthy, that could be viable could win the national championship, right? So 8 through 12, we don't really need those. And then what? Like 13th is Florida State, 3 losses. So you have Florida State fans arguing with Washington fans, right? Like this is the future. Even LSU, like 4-loss LSU fans will be like, well, we made the SEC championship, blah, blah, blah. So it's like it's never going to end, right? I wish they would just get rid of conferences and teams would play like each other like during the season, That would kind of, these kind of super conferences things, that would kind of help out a little bit. Have some big schools play each other cross conference during the year, but I don't think that'll happen, So, we're stuck with what it is. But like I said, I love college football, so can't really complain.
So I read the market. I get a good feel from open numbers. I always talk about trusting and respecting the opening numbers. I do my numbers before they get released at Circa, Superbook, DraftKings, whatever. I was pretty spot on with Michigan 9.5 against TCU. Then I said to myself, and I talked to our good friend Dave Sharapan before the numbers were released, and I was like, okay, now they have to make a decision. Do they want Georgia money or do they want Ohio State money? Surprised, shocked, spot on. They opened up Georgia only -6 against Ohio State.
Not really, because they know that it will attract a lot of Ohio State bets, at that. So I feel like these semifinal games, people are more of betting on who they want to win, right? So I think the sportsbook will get their money either way, right? And I'm sure the pros will wait till a number sorts itself out. I personally, I'm not going to bet the game, nearly 4 weeks in advance, like right now, right? 3.5 weeks in advance, because you never know, right? Guys could get COVID the day before and be out and stuff. So I think it's still too risky to bet the line early. But I would certainly take, Georgia, because I think Georgia's just too physical. We saw Michigan just out physical Ohio State, right? They ran right down their throat in the second half when it counted. Their backup running back had like 220 yards rushing. So, and we saw the Michigan wide receivers who, I think J.J. McCarthy is a serviceable quarterback. I don't think he's a great quarterback, right? He's a smaller guy. I don't think his arm is really great. But we saw him just chuck it downfield to these receivers who were just wide open because the Ohio State, secondary, played a terrible game. So, are these guys just got better, like from that game into to this game? So what's going to happen? What's going to happen when Georgia comes out and completes a long pass to start the game, right? These guys, how are the Ohio State secondary going to react? Are they going to just drop their head and, here we go again, get down on themselves? Or do they know they can play and keep up with these guys? So I think a lot goes to say about how they start the game. Like, will Georgia just come out and just punch them in the mouth right away? Kind of like what they did with Michigan last year. Like the Georgia-Michigan game in the Orange Bowl was over in the first quarter, right? Georgia was just destroying them. Will we see that again this year? I'm not sure Georgia's defense is as good as last year, but I think their offense is better. I think Brock Bowers is, total animal. And I don't see their defense, their offense being stopped by the Ohio State defense. So I'm just interested to see, like, how Ohio State reacts. They say that, we're getting a new breath on life. It's like a second chance. It was like weird how Ryan Day was like, we're going to take chances now. We're going to put it all on the line. Like, is this not how you thought, like, against Michigan? Like, you just were like, hey, we can just, we don't want to take any chances. We're not going to put it all on the line, right? Like, when coaches say this stuff, it's confusing. Like, it's just like they're trying to get their pep talk in, right? We're going to lay it all on the line now that the committee chose us. We're going to try, like, it's just this rah stuff doesn't really do it for me. So we'll see, how Ohio State responds. And I think the TCU Michigan game is, it's intriguing, right? Because we've seen Michigan come out and lay a few eggs this year as well. So, does the TCU speed, have to see how the TCU speed kind of matches up with the Michigan power. Can the TCU defense play lights out? They didn't really play that well against Kansas State, especially, on the ground. So I think it all comes down to TCU for just stopping the Michigan run game, making J.J. McCarthy throw. I'm not sure they can, do that, but I'd probably if TCU gets up into the tens, probably take a bite with TCU right there. But yeah, right now I bet TCU plus 10 and Georgia minus 6.5.
Were you surprised when you're looking at that market? I saw. I think it was the Superbook put out futures. Georgia minus 120. I think Michigan plus 240. Ohio State plus 400, and then TCU was like plus, I don't know, 1,400 or whatever it is. If you liked Georgia, obviously to beat Ohio State, and if you liked Michigan to beat TCU, I mean, you technically could take two swings there, and you're guaranteed money. Is that a market that you'll address in the next 3 weeks, or you're just going to see where the market goes?
No, I just don't. When it comes down to it, I don't think Michigan can beat Georgia. So, going into the championship game with Michigan, plus 2, whatever. I saw them plus 300, I think, at DraftKings. Georgia was minus 130. I'm not trying to bet a minus 130 favorite for a couple weeks and just hold on to it. Maybe if I bet like 130,000 on it, sure, right? But a couple thousand, I'm not trying to wait, a couple weeks for that. So, and I don't think Michigan can beat Georgia, right? So I think Georgia just does what Michigan does a lot better, right? Better quarterback. Michigan may have the better running back, but if he was running, behind Georgia's offensive line, I think he would be a lot better. And I just think, it's a total coaching advantage with Kirby Smart, right? There's a guy who's taken out Nick Saban multiple times, right? Jim Harbaugh, I don't see Jim Harbaugh out coaching, Nick Saban. I think, Smart has that new, kind of like that new Saban swag. And I think, like I said on a different podcast, like Georgia is kind of like the new Alabama right now, right? Is Georgia going to start this dynasty kind of like Nick Saban and Alabama did? And I kind of lean towards yes, because they just, Georgia's so deep. Their 2s and 3s, they got, these 5-star recruits, just huge physical guys. I think Georgia's just a bigger team. So I don't really think a team like Michigan can go through them. I think Michigan, I was pretty surprised that they went on, an undefeated regular season and stuff. Jim Harbaugh, he's proving himself, but I think that might be their ceiling. But could Georgia trip up and lose? I'm sure they can. If they played a bad game, but they just have so much experience with Stetson Bennett and stuff. And like Brock Bowers, this guy is just not going to forget how to play football, right? This guy he runs people over for a living, right? So it's hard to see them just slipping up, having a bad game, especially when they've been there before, right? They've played a tough schedule all season, right? They came back against Missouri to win, right? They've pretty much done everything. So I have a hard time seeing Georgia lose, but it's certainly possible.
We're a month in about a couple days in the college basketball. It's been a great month for us. I've been following you on your timeline. Season doesn't get going till start of January. Conference games being played. Actually, a few of them have already started. A month in, what are your eyes seeing? How you been hitting college hoops, and anyone stick out in particular for you?
Yeah, I had a really good week. The season so far has been really good, actually. Just last week we hit 2 max plays. It was the first 2 max plays of the year. I had a Virginia team total over, I think, 65.5 at home against who did they play? Sarah, was it? Now I've drawn a blank, but I've been really sold with Georgia. With Virginia. Virginia's looked pretty good this year. They have the scoring kind of like all the Tony Bennett teams have lacked scoring in the past. Even their championship team, they lacked scoring, but they could score like when they needed it because they had a bunch of really great players. I think this year they have like kind of scoring when they need it. So I like Virginia this year. And the max play was Virginia team total at Michigan over 65.5. So that won pretty comfortably. And then on Saturday, I give a max play out. It was a Syracuse Notre Dame first half over 62.5. And I think Notre Dame made like 8 or 9 3-pointers in the first half. Syracuse was keeping up with them, and that thing flew over with like 4 minutes to go. So it's been a great year. It's been I've been taking a lot of big spreads this year. Like I took the Hurricanes have been a wagon for the basketball. Took the Hurricanes yesterday, I think -10 against Louisville, and they won by like nearly 30 points. So the Hurricanes have been pretty good this year. And I've just been fading bad teams. Like we started out the year fading Florida State for a while. Now they've covered their last 2 games. I think they're like 3-8 against the spread. I think they're like 1-10, maybe is their record. And now another team I'm fading is Louisville. Like, what's Louisville? 0-9. I mean, they can't win a game. They can't cover a spread. Their team is just bad. And it's like when you're 0-9, the team, you're 0-9, you're going into conference play. The team just starts to quit, right? Every game you're losing, and every game you're just like, oh man, we suck. No matter what, we're not going to make tournament right now. We're already out of it, basically. So, when do they start quitting and stuff like that? So I've been fading Louisville right now. And I think Gonzaga looks terrible so far to start this year. Drew Timme looks like he made a terrible mistake not going to the NBA. He has not looked good. So not really surprised right there. I mean, Gonzaga, it's tough to be like one of the best teams every year, right? At some point, you're going to have a drop-off, kind of like Alabama football, right? Like, it's just hard to do it. Even though you have all the athletes, it's just hard every single year to just be up there taking the punches and stuff. And I think, Gonzaga had a lot of targets on their back. Gonzaga's down right now. I think UConn looks good. You're UConn. They're looking very good. So there's quite a few teams that look good, and Houston looks good, but Houston kind of reminds me of the old Virginia, right? When can Houston get points when they need it the most, right? I don't want to see these 49 to 45 games, right? Like if you want to be a national champion, you got to score 70 points a game, right? Just pace teams, right? Get ready for the postseason. But I think Houston looks pretty good to start this year. Their defense is like suffocating. But can Kelvin Sampson, can he coach a team to a national championship? I'm not really sure. Kentucky looks pretty good. I mean, so you got a lot of teams right now that look good, that are just only going to get better as the season goes on. So, right now I like Virginia. I think Virginia looks really good. So, we'll just see as the season progresses.
It's funny because I got Ken Palm up right now. They got Houston 1, Texas 2, Tennessee 3, UConn 4, Kentucky 5, Purdue 6, Virginia 7th, UCLA 8, Gonzaga 9. Rounding out the top 10 is Indiana. Had talks with our friend Matt in June, July. Everyone in the world grabbed Creighton at 40-1. I think they're down to in the teens, 18, 19, 20, whatever they are. Had a couple hiccups, quote unquote, per Matt, tired legs, whatever. They're going to be the Big East. Obviously, no Jay Wright this year. Villanova struggling right now. Right now, it looks like UConn and Creighton, the top of the heap there. What's surprising me with UConn is I knew they were going to be long. I knew they were going to be deep this year, 8-9-man rotation. I didn't think they'd be this good this fast. They played a bunch of cupcakes to start the year. Then on the Thanksgiving weekend, they go out, they beat Oregon by 28. They beat Bama by 15. Then they close out, beat Iowa State by 13. I just, listen, when you're playing kids and when you got new guys coming in and out now because of the transfer portal, you got to work on your rotations and stuff. I, too, have been eyeing that Virginia team. I love the eye test. And I talk a lot about, they're usually a 112, 114, 116 over-under. They're in the 130s. I'm like, run of the window. They're scoring this year.
Yeah, UConn, they're playing great this year. I mean, I don't really, I liked UConn against Oklahoma State because I got to watch Oklahoma State like play in the Bahamas. I watched a couple of their games courtside and stuff, and I just think they're a decent team, but I think UConn's just a tier above. So I did like that play like last week. But these Ken Palm rankings and stuff, they really do nothing for me, right? Kind of like this Jeff Sagarin or whatever for college football, right? Like this guy has Texas at 8 in college football, his rankings to end the year, right? Like how is Texas lost like 4 games, right? Like he has them ahead of TCU and stuff. So I'm not, Texas, they looked great this year in basketball for sure, but they did beat Gonzaga and Creighton. But I think Creighton was like a little tired of that game. And, Creighton did make it close and Creighton covered the game. Texas did blow out Gonzaga, but like I said, I don't think Gonzaga is really there this year. So what is, I want to see these teams play like tougher games as the season goes on. But yeah, Texas has looked great this year. And, it's all college basketball. It's just a weird sport, right? You just have to get to the tournament and then it's like anything can happen in the tournament, right? So like if Texas lost in the first round, second round of the tournament, would you be surprised? No, because that happens every single year. So I think the good teams just know how to like get prepared, like, and get plan well like for March, right? Like I always talk about, I think that one of the most important things is like you never want to be playing your best basketball right? Like you don't want to be playing your best basketball in November if you're a college basketball team, right? You want to get better and better throughout the year. So you're playing very well when you're heading into your conference tournament and the NCAA tournament, right? Kind of like the NFL, right? You don't want to be the team, so the Giants that starts 7-1, looking great in September and October, then November, December comes, you're losing 4 out of 5, stuff like that. So you always want to be playing your best as the season goes on. And I think college basketball is just a unique sport, right? Where we really have no idea who's going to win a national championship every year, right? I think Kansas has looked good in spots this year. Stuff. I think when it comes to college basketball, you just look for experience in March, right? Which team has that experience, right? That's one of the reasons, like I said, I like the Hurricanes earlier because they're just experienced. They made that run there last year. They brought all those guys back. So Virginia has a lot of experience, right? So, or where you get like a team like UConn, who's just like UConn always has these kind of like New York City ballers who they're just going out there to ball. Like they know they're better than you. They might not be experienced, but they just grew up playing basketball, right? That's all they know. So teams like that are always dangerous. But a team like Gonzaga, like usually I'm high on Gonzaga, but this year I just think Gonzaga's got zero shot to win any national championship. So don't waste your money betting Gonzaga.
And a little nervous for me a couple years ago, being the season ticket holder for UConn. I witnessed Florida coming into town, and this is when Florida was better than UConn, and it was a nail biter, and UConn beat them by like 2 at Stores. Wednesday, UConn travels to Florida. Ken Palm's got UConn 77-71. So if I asked you right now on Monday, UConn -6 against Florida, you would say what?
I would take UConn all day.
Okay.
Because, the Gators men's basketball team, I mean, they haven't looked great this year, right? Like, I don't think they've been anything special at all. In fact, I had Stetson plus 11.5 in the first half yesterday, which hit. They covered by like a half point. But, you look at the Gators, they've lost to FAU. FAU is having a pretty good year, but they lost to FAU at home. They were down by like 30 against Florida State in the first half. They came back to win that game. They lost to Xavier. They lost to West Virginia by 30, right? So they've been all right. This isn't the Florida team of old. You don't have Billy Donovan's not there anymore, right? So I think Florida is more of like a name now in college basketball than I don't think it's going to the O'Connell Center to play a game and come out with a win these days. I don't think it's as tough as it used to be, obviously, as we saw FAU do it. So I definitely take UConn in that spot, especially maybe moneyline parlay UConn with somebody else that night. But yeah, I definitely like UConn in that spot. They definitely have a lot more skill than the Gators do. The Gators basketball this year, they kind of play that style where it's like a bunch of old guys in the gym. They're going to play tough and stuff. They don't really have like a dominant player, right? That in crunch time you can just give the ball to, right, and just tell them to go to work, right? They don't really have that. They just got guys that play pretty well together, that have been playing well together for a while. And I just don't really think the Gators, basketball is very dangerous. So I definitely lean UConn in that spot.
I'm gonna switch gears here. I live about 45 minutes from Boston Garden, and combined the Celtics and the Bruins, they're like 26-1 this year to start the year at the Garden. The Bruins are undefeated at home. They fire their coach. Everyone blamed the coach. Well, it's funny because the coach in Vegas is coming into town Tuesday or Wednesday, so I'm excited for that game. But I know you being a season ticket holder of the Panthers, big fan of the Panthers, great run last year. Looking at the Bruins start, assess the NHL, assess your Panthers, and listen, I'm just telling you, this Bruins start is off the charts, but they're not as good as this start.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because I think the Bruins have 3 losses. And their last loss, Panthers dominated them in Florida. And then the Heat beat the Celtics in Boston on Friday. So, South Florida sports, we kind of have that rivalry with Boston, right? The Heat Celtics has been a rivalry since, we used to play you guys with Dwayne Wade versus Paul Pierce, stuff like that. So I think obviously the Bruins look great, right? They look great at home. I think the Bruins, they're playing well. Like this all just comes back to like we said, like, do you really want to be playing your best hockey in October and stuff like that? But I think the Bruins can obviously at some point the Bruins are going to go on a losing streak, right? It's just natural, right? It just happens to every team, even the greatest teams. Like the Avalanche last year went on a losing streak as well, so it happens to everybody. But it's like I think. They play great defense and stuff. They've been great at getting great goaltending and stuff. Can they just have maybe a little more instant offense, than they have right now, right? Like right now they're just beating teams up, being more physical and stuff. I noticed when the Panthers played Boston here, I was at the game right behind the glass. I mean, we just took it to them physically, right? Like we came out and punched them in the mouth. I think that's how teams got to play the Bruins. But they're having a great year. You can't deny they're 18-3 or something like that. I mean, you really can't deny that. So I think Boston, even though they lose, even though they're probably going on a losing streak, I think they'll still be getting better as the season goes on, right? Because even if you lose, I mean, a lot of these teams are still getting better. They're still learning and stuff like that. So, losing a few games will be good for them. So I definitely think Boston's in a good spot right now in the East. I mean, they're definitely, the best team in the division right now. I don't really see many teams that could in a playoff series. I think who could beat them. I think the Lightning may be a little too old right now, right? Like the Lightning struggle to get shots on goal. We see the Lightning get 4 or 5 shots in a period sometimes. I just don't see it. I think a team like the Panthers, even though I think I hate our coach, our new coach, I hate him. They'll give Boston a hard time, but outside of that, in the East, I mean, I don't really take Carolina, too seriously right now. The Capitals are just down, out, and injured. The Rangers look like garbage to start the year. The Islanders have been doing pretty well lately, but listen, when it comes to the playoffs, I don't think anybody is scared of playing the Islanders. They kind of have that blue collar team. They're going to out effort you, right? And this stuff just doesn't work in the playoffs. So. I think it's definitely looking good right now for the Bruins. They're definitely the class of the conference. They handled the Avalanche, pretty well. So I think they'll only continue to get better. So I'll be interested to see if teams like the Bruins make any moves. If like the deadline try to pick up like another score or something like that. But yeah, they look great right now, so can't really deny them.
Out west, last year, Avs an amazing run. They were hands down the best team in the NHL. I'm not saying they're having a hangover or nothing. They're just being the Avs. What are you seeing out west? Is it? I mean, who's the team or teams that you think can dethrone the Kings and the Avs?
Yeah, the Avs. I mean, I think the Avs are still the class of the West. I mean, you got Vegas came out this year. Vegas is playing well. And one team that I really do like is Seattle, right? The Kraken. They play some interesting. They play some very interesting style of hockey, right? Like they just come out and they can score a ton. It's very interesting to watch them play. And also with the East, I don't really take the Devils seriously, right? The Devils, I mean, they're starting out hot right now, stuff like that, but I think the Devils kind of remind me of the Carolina Hurricanes from last year. At the end of the day, in a 7-game series, are they going to beat one of the more experienced teams? I don't really think so. So that's the East for me. And the West, you got Dallas. Dallas is first place in the Central. 14-6. Dallas, I mean, they have scoring and stuff like that. I mean, they were down big yesterday. They nearly came back to. I think did they actually win it in OT or they lost in OT? Or went to a shootout and they lost, but they were down 5-1. They came back tied at 5. They have a lot of good players. Like they got Mason Marchment from the Panthers, good young tough player. So I do think the Avalanche are still the class of the West at the end of the day because it's hard to deny their talent. Like Rantanen, Nathan McKinnon, Cale Makar. I mean, they got so many guys that I think right now it's just more of like an interest thing, right? They've been through this season before. They know what it takes to get to the playoffs, and they know how they need to play when they get to the playoffs. So I think the Avs are just going through the motions right now. And look, they're only 6 points behind the Stars for first place in the Central, and they've played 3 less games. So they're really right there. In Vegas, they lead the West right now, but when it comes playoff time, it's hard to, bet on the Golden Knights to win it all. So I think, it's fun to watch a team like Seattle. I think Calgary is going to get better as the season goes on. And we're seeing teams at the bottom play like a little better also. So the West has been pretty fun to watch. I love the bet Canucks games because it's like you just take the over in every Canucks game, right? They play no defense and they'll score a few goals here and there. So the West has been fun to watch. And I think the Flames with that roster, the Flames should get better throughout the year. I think the Flames are kind of like, the Panthers, right? They got, they basically exchanged best players, right? Huberdeau for Kachuk. And they're just getting used to playing with their new teams and stuff like that. So I think Calgary is a team to watch out for. They're only 11-10 right now, but they'll, like I said, you want to get better throughout the season. So I think we'll see Calgary start getting better and the Panthers, starting to play better as well. But I think there's just a handful of teams that can really win it all. You got in the West, I don't think Seattle can win it all, obviously, because of their experience. And the Vegas could certainly get there. I could see the Stars getting there because they play tough. Anytime you have an explosive offense, I think that gives you a chance to do well in the playoffs. As we see with the Rangers, they just basically hitched their wagon to Shesterkin. You can't really count on your goalie to shut every team out to win games, right? You got to have offense at some point. So I think that's what going back to the Bruins, I think that's what the Bruins do so well, right? They get offense and they get defense, right? They're just a well-rounded team. I'd say right now, obviously, the Bruins are definitely the most well-rounded team in the NHL.
As we start to wrap this show up, I know you're swamped and busy. I think you're going to be feeling a little better now with Buffalo. A couple hiccups, 3 road games in a row, 2 in Detroit. They come to New England on the Thursday. They take care of business. They're sitting back now saying, thank you very much, Joe Burrow. And Cincinnati Bengals by defeating Kansas City, who Joe is now 3-0 against Kansas City and Patrick Mahomes. They're really starting to establish that running game. No Joe Mixon, in comes P. Ryan, no problem. Chase is back. I know you got a lot of futures and beliefs in the Bills. I had the Bills back in June, July. I think it goes through Buffalo in January. I don't think anyone in the AFC is going to take them out. Thoughts about the Bills, the AFC, and is Philly for real, or no Jimmy G now in San Fran? What are you seeing out west?
I mean, no Jimmy G in San Fran. That obviously hurts the Niners, but their defense is still great. So I'd be surprised if the Niners don't do something, right, to try to get a free agent quarterback. I don't know, something, right? Like Brock Purdy can't. I don't know. Like maybe Brock Purdy can surprise people and play crazy well. It's hard to see. Can their defense bring the intensity every single game, every quarter? It's tough to see, right? And Philly, they've been playing great. You can't really, not really much, negative to say about the Eagles, but they just don't have a lot of experience. Their coach doesn't have a lot of experience in the playoffs, obviously. So I think the NFC. I mean, look at the Cowboys have been looking great, right? They're dropping 50 points like it's nothing. The Colts are still like a decent team, so to drop 50 on them, it's pretty good. I think the Cowboys definitely have the potential to make the Super Bowl. I think how great would it be to have a Eagles Cowboys NFC championship? In Philly, right? That would be great. But yeah, like as far as you're saying about the Bills, I just they got lucky, right? They got Josh Allen got injured, and he's been able to play the last 3 games, and they've won the last 3 games, and he's been playing decent. You can see like every game he's getting healthier, right? His arm is getting healthier, stuff like that. So their run game is starting to pick back up. Their defense, Jordan Poyer's back. Their defense looks a lot better. So yeah, I definitely think it goes through Buffalo, and it's going to be tough for any team to go to Buffalo and win in the playoffs. Like I don't think the Dolphins have beaten Buffalo in December or later in like 20 years or something like that. Just wild. So I definitely think the Bills are the class of the NFL right now. And they'd be favored over the Eagles. But the NFC, I think it's more the Eagles to lose, right? But I think the Cowboys, look, when the Cowboys are playing at their peak, they're a tough team to beat. But at the end of the day, they have Mike McCarthy. So you just can't really trust him. But you don't have to worry about like the Packers this year, right? The Rams are just finished, right? All these teams that you would usually have to worry about, they don't have to worry about them. So I think it's Cowboys. The Cowboys want to make the Super Bowl this year, right? They just like this is the Cowboys' year to make it, right? Like there's no Rams, there's no Packers to deal with, right? The Buccaneers are down, and I actually think the Buccaneers play well. Would you be shocked if Tom Brady went to Philly in the playoffs and won on the road? I wouldn't.
No.
So I think this year it's like anybody's year in the NFC. I'd lean to the Eagles, but it's certainly not a done deal.
Rob, I've had the scroller going the whole time. I know where to find you, obviously on Twitter at Beating the Bookie. For everyone watching and listening, whether it's now, whether it's later today on YouTube, Twitch, or wherever they find our podcast, tell everyone, A, where to find you, B, what you got brewing for the rest of 2022, 2023, and your packages.
Yeah, all my packages are right on the at beatingthebookie.com right there. I give out a lot of free plays on Twitter, stuff like that. Everybody knows. So the rest of the year, we got the bowl package coming up. College bowl package is always one of the most fun of the year, because you have games going on a Tuesday, right? So like if you're going into an office job, you can watch bowl games all day pretty much. Just a fun time. We got NHL going. We have got college basketball rocking every night. And college basketball for me, it's one of the most fun, just because every single day, just consistent. Um, so it's been a great time, and this is always the best time of the year because it's like we have nonstop action with the college football. Then we have the holiday tournament, stuff like that. So it's always something going. College basketball, college football, NFL, NHL. You can't really beat it. It's an exciting time to be a sports fan. 2023, we just hope to pretty much carry on to the same thing. We got the World Cup going on right now. It's been whatever. I started off the World Cup terrible. Like, take the under, the game goes over. Take the over, it goes under. It's been a kind of a boring World Cup, but we're starting to pick it up a little bit there. But yeah, it's we got everything going on site, and we always have free plays, so feel free to follow on Twitter. But I'm sure most people do that already. Follow us too. So it's a fun time, and hopefully we can win some money for the holidays.
Absolutely. It's been a pleasure. Follow Rob at Beating the Book, Mr. B2B himself. Great follow. And, tons of free plays there. And again, you can reach out, ask him a question, and believe it or not, he will turn around and reply, unlike the 99.9% checkmark and big platform and loudmouth platform stages that most of gambling Twitter is all about. So for myself, Jeff Dawson at DC Sports Invest, from the one and only B2B at Beating the Book, we wish everyone a blessed morning and a happy start to the week. Retweet, have some fun with this. Any questions, reach out to either one of us, and we will be glad to answer them. And later this afternoon, myself and Riley Maddoxon will be back with the closing bell. Stay tuned.
See ya.